For this task, you're going to need to find these notes in your interactive notebook that we glued in. And we're going to be talking about the difference between reading literary text versus informational text. So you're going to be filling these boxes in according to the chart and the question. Make sure you pause the screencast to make sure you take complete notes, and you can re-watch it as many times as you want to make sure that you understand the information. So what is literary text versus informational text? We can think about some base words that we know: literature, inform. Literary text has to do with literature that we read, like The Lightning Thief, all the novels that we read, your summer reading, those kinds of books are considered literary text. We're going to start reading The Lightning Thief here next week. Informational text comes from text that, like the Achieve articles, things that you would read in science or social studies or find on the internet. Even YouTube videos give us information. If we were to type out all the words or the text, the things that were said in a YouTube video that we watch to teach us something, that would be informational text. So we're going to compare some different attributes, some different characteristics about each so that we really make sure we understand how we read each one differently to make sure that we get the most out of our reading. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the purpose. Number one, why do we read it? Why do we read literary text? Well, for me and for hopefully you, it's for fun. We find some entertainment out of it. When we read informational text, while that can also be fun, our ultimate goal is that we're learning something new. We're learning new information from it. Okay? And this is an example of an article that we're going to be reading about the Greek gods as we learn about the Greek gods and read about them for fun. For organization, we want to think about how is literary text organized differently than informational text. When we think of how stories or literary text is organized, we think of story elements. All these stories have characters in them that deal with conflicts that lead to a plot. They happen in a particular setting, and they always have some kind of theme or lesson that we can learn from the end. The events always happen in a particular order in which they happen, from beginning to end. When we think about informational text, we think of text structures, and different texts can be organized in different ways. And the most common ways are chronological order for time order, like in history, from the beginning of time to present day. We can think of causes and effects. It might compare and contrast two different things. It might state a problem and some solutions, or it might just give a description or describe what's happening. Another characteristic or attribute that we're going to look at is the types. What types of things do we read for each? So when we're reading literature, we read novels, but we might also have poems or short stories. When we're reading informational text, we might be reading our textbooks in social studies or science or math. We might be looking at internet articles or newspaper or magazine articles. Ultimately, our goal is to remember, and so let's look at retention. So we have to think that our brains have to organize the information that we're reading in some way. And so how does it do that? So sometimes when we're reading, we do plot diagrams or story maps that kind of list out who the characters are, what they're like. Your summer reading paper was similar to a story map. For informational text, we use different kinds of graphic organizers, maybe timelines or Venn diagrams, webs and charts, maybe outlines to organize the information that we're reading so that it's easier to remember. The reading process is really important for us to think about. Our brains have to adjust to a different mindset when we're reading literary text versus informational text. When we're reading a story, we can read it at a quicker pace. It's a little bit easier to read because it's more fun for the most part. Now that's if the text that you're reading is at your reading level. We also read it by visualizing the action as it's happening. The author gives us good description and figurative language so we can visualize it. When we're reading informational text, we know that we're going to be tested on this in some way, or we have to remember it, so we should slow our pace down. We might take notes. This is why we work on annotating a lot. And we might have to go back and reread it to make sure that we understand it and remember it. what does it look like? Literary text looks different. We have chapter titles. It might have illustrations, definitely on the cover, maybe in the pages inside. For informational text, we look at unit titles, maybe section headings, telling us what each part is about. We might see highlighted or underlined vocabulary or bold printed. We might see charts and maps. Instead of illustrations, we probably see photographs and diagrams. And so that's kind of the highlights, a quick snapshot of the difference between literary text and informational text. And we're doing that because next week we're going to start reading The Lightning Thief, and this week we're going to start working some informational text as we read and learn a little bit more about Achieve. So I just want to make sure that we've touched on that. None of this information should be new to you. It's all a review, but it's just important that as we read, we kind of think about the differences so that our brain is equipped to make sure that we understand and remember what we need to.